Hey folks, it's Sam. And as you can see, I'm here with Casey Scott from Gold Star Astrology. Hey, Casey.
Hey, how's it going, Sam?
Good. We're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. We're going to be teaching a class on eclipses, personal and global cycles of change. 2024 is going to be off the hook, both personally and collectively, of course, with all the eclipses coming in April and then one in October. And so we're going to be talking about those things today on this class, and also talking about the upcoming class that we're going to be doing. Again, it's really about aligning with the weird, unseen, and dangerous energies in you and in life. The eclipses are always kind of lurking. The nodal axis is there, kind of moving silently. And we have a few case studies where I'm even going to break out one that we all saw very intensely a couple of years ago, the last election that happened, the eclipse with the USA chart, the chart of the former president. Again, very intense case study. Then we're going to talk about some other things. But again, I'm joined by Casey, and he's at Gold Star Astrology if you watch his stuff on Instagram and whatnot. So Casey, welcome. And what do you have to say about what we're going to be talking about today? He has some great stuff to share.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about your intro that if anybody knows about weird energy, it'd be the two of us, right?
Yeah, we were both born on eclipses, near eclipses. One of the things we're going to be talking about here today, we're going to go over the course, and one of them is one of the bullet points in the course is understanding people in your life born near eclipses. This is kind of the overview of the course. You know, the 2024 eclipses and shifts, both personally and in world events, accurate calculations, different things like that. But yeah, Casey, how do you feel as an eclipsed person who eclipses everyone? This is the thing. We tend to eclipse everyone.
Yeah.
We're the eclipse. We're the walking eclipse. So this is why I said it's about eclipsing, understanding the people in your life who are eclipsing you. We tend to be the eclipse.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because you're the Rahu end of the node, and I've got a lot of planets join Ketu, and so we kind of balance each other out with that eclipse energy.
We allow each other to eclipse the other, I guess, right? But right. Yeah, so the eclipse is, one of the other big things that I'm talking about in the course, actually, when I go down here at the end, is the difference between Rahu eclipses and Ketu eclipses, because again, they're different things. I had it up here, actually. What is the difference between a Rahu eclipse and a Ketu eclipse? And what's the difference between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse? Rahu eclipse is the sun, Rahu eclipse is the moon. Again, they're all different, and we tend to throw out the word eclipse like, oh yeah, eclipse. I mean, they're all different, obviously, based on things like the sign and whatnot, but even also the character and the quality. Because again, a solar eclipse isn't a lunar eclipse. A Rahu eclipse isn't a Ketu eclipse. So these are the things that we're going to be, breaking out here. And Casey has also done quite a bit of case study work. One of the things I know with Casey when I invite him on these classes, and he's a great researcher. And again, you want to go to his Instagram to really also see he does some great research into all kinds of things here. And I just sent him on a few, I gave him a few tasks and said, oh yeah, check this out. And he's got his papers. Casey, what have you been finding out here lately?
Well, first you were talking about, when you sent out the invite to the page and to the course, we were talking about that, the election. And so I took my calendar where I've already got a lot of the events kind of listed out, and I just went bullet point by bullet point when the states, certified their election, when normal like legal proceedings stopped and it became just inflammatory and kind of conspiracy and all that stuff was going on. And so I was just going step by step, learning about all that. And
back in the 2020 election, you mean?
Yeah, for sure. And it was really interesting not only to see the astrological thing, but I learned a lot about, our government and our election process too. So it's, you know, double whammy.
Yeah.
That's why I love doing this stuff, because I didn't grow up here, so I'm learning about my country and how the government works too while I'm doing the astrological research.
Yeah, and there was another one, and in fact, Casey and I are going to have another discussion here, maybe next week, probably next week, about. I also said, go look at popes, because you won't believe what you find out, because we've already done the thing on royalty, but I've been saying for years also popes, and they have good birth times too. You can at least find the birth day. Some of them you have the birth time, but popes as well. Almost all of them are born on eclipses or the day or the cycle, very close to eclipses as well. They're like Casey and I, born during the eclipse month. Some of them right on the eclipse, and they die during the eclipse. And by the way, the last Rahu in Pisces eclipse is when John Paul II died. Now, John Paul II had been Pope for like 25 years or something. So again, this is also a big foreshadowing of this Rahu in Pisces. So again, a huge thing. And what we're talking about with this case study is in December 14, 2020, all the electors met in state capitals all over the U.S. to certify the 2020 election. Little did we know at the time that on the same day as the state secretaries legally certified the state results, fake electors had been prepared and an elaborate plan had been hatched. Now, of course, we know this now. 2 years later, those who planned the scheme in an attempt to subvert the legally certified results of the election would confess to those crimes. So whether you agree with the election outcome or not, even if you think it was stolen or whatever, none of that really matters relative to the truth being that these crimes happened. They were confessed to. These things happened. And the events of that day will reverberate for years. That was an eclipse day. This happened while the eclipse was going on. So again, in this day, there was a solar eclipse in Scorpio in Jyeshta Nakshatra. And this exact degree aligned with the ascendant of the USA chart, of course, according to me and my rectification, which is based on the birth certificate in hand of Ebenezer Sibley at the time. The U.S. has a Scorpio ascendant, and also the chart of the president who had just lost. I mean, look at how exact this is. All three of them have either their ascendant, Ketu, or moon at 28 degrees of Scorpio. Again, this does not happen all the time. We only have eclipses at this exact degree, maybe perhaps every 60 years or something like that. The previous time that we had a Ketu in Scorpio eclipse, especially Ketu in Jyeshta Nakshatra, was in the early 60s, like 1964. And that coincided, again, with other amazing events that correspond with U.S. history. And again, these are the things that we're going to be talking about in this weekend course on eclipses, personal and global cycles of change. So you're going to see how these things affect you, but also how they affect events in the world. This is a visceral case study. And the other thing to understand, just real quick, then I'll bring Casey in, is the thing about this is that even though all eclipses aren't this impactful, again, that doesn't mean that silently lurking for months or even years, the collective karma of a country and the world aren't happening. In that day, they all collided, and it was obvious they were going to converge, because if you look at those charts, you see it. So this is why, like, for example, in your life, you have planets in Pisces or near exact positions. When eclipses hit right on there, then years of cycles of karma that have been silently lurking explode and converge when we have those eclipses. So this is a great example of it being very concentrated. It's not always that concentrated, but it doesn't mean they're less impactful. So again, as it says here, the collective karma of a country, the world, and one man all collided on that day. It was snatched from normal time, plunged into a confusing vortex of history that we're still dealing with and maybe dealing with for decades to come. We're still dealing with this. The denial of the election, the whole thing that happened, and who knows how long we're going to be dealing with it. So silently lurking behind everyday events in our lives, hidden from view like a serpent of the deep, is the hidden energy of the lunar nodes. Weird momentum gathering in your life. Again, So these are this is the thing to really understand about this course, about what the nodes really are, what the eclipse cycles are. So we're going to bring that into great focus. Casey, what would you like to say?
And, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about those dates, and we've all kind of compartmentalized it because it was so much going on in 2020, but like that same day that the electors met was when they started rolling out the vaccine too, right, for the COVID. And then the variant was the very next week when the Delta variant started taking over, and we were all locked down right from Thanksgiving at that point too. So it's like that second
I totally
lockdown
forgotten
at the
about
same
that.
time. Yeah.
I remember at the same time saying it, but yeah, but so again, here what Casey said, that was the day they also started rolling out the vaccine.
Right.
How specific is that? Are we still dealing with the repercussions of the vaccine? And the vaccine is was really what caused it. And then into Biden's presidency and whatnot. Again, and by the way, these things are very specific. A vaccine is a needle, an injection, all of that. This is Scorpio. One of the descriptions of Scorpio is it's got the stinger, it's got the sharp drill, it's activated by Ketu. This is all also vaccines hidden. This is what poison is. All vaccines and medicines are also poisons that create healing. This is what all, like especially vaccines and antidotes and whatnot, when they talk about even things like serpents biting you and stuff like that, it's when poison becomes medicine. This is why all medicine can become poison if it's taken in the wrong dose and whatnot. Even in Ayurveda, all this is a principle. The reason I'm saying it is because that's very much about Scorpio, hidden healing power, and especially the nakshatra of Jeshta. So again, when we look at eclipses, these things happen. And even since then, again, this is just on the page to introduce the course, but the eclipses that have happened since then, particularly relative even to like Ukraine and other things like that. Casey has done some work on that as well, extemporaneously as well. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those events from the past and also making predictions about 2024.
One of the things about the nodes is they're always kind of on opposite ends of the zodiac. And so they create a lot of polarity, right? So you have like these really strong poles of the push and the pull. And if you just think about two subjects that are as polarizing in this country as anything, it's the election and the vaccine, right? So it's like those two things, and that being on an eclipse like really polarize those subjects. And so it just helps us understand why those things out of anything is like the things that everyone's got these hardline stances.
And this confusing polarity is really what we're going to be looking at and talking about in the course, because that's really what the what we're all dealing with. And again, it's this sort of lurking energy that's always kind of lurking. So again, the thing to really understand about the course and about the subject matter itself, and what we're going to be talking about in this course, Eclipses, Personal and Global Cycles of Change, personal clarity and insight into obsessions and withdrawals shown from the nodal axis that's affecting you all the time. It's whether you know it or not. You need to know where the nodes are all the time, how they're affecting you. Example, Rahu is in Pisces and Ketu in Virgo in 2024. What does this mean to you? The eclipses are just make it explode in your life. But if you're not careful, the eclipses can blow up your life if you don't know where they are, if you don't know what you have there. That energy is kind of silently lurking there. So again, we tend to think when things get like that it just suddenly happens somehow. But some of us, even in 2020 election, were tracking it the whole time. I was tracking it the whole time. I was doing updates during that whole election season. And I was also watching, by the way, talk about biases. People call me biased because I just call the thing as I see it. And I was saying at the time, it was very clear that this transit, which again, we saw years ahead, especially once the eclipse season, once the once the election cycle started, I said, this is going to be the day when the hammer comes down and the election will be certified and it'll be over. There were people, again, very biased astrologers, of course, Trump supporters, who said this is going to be the day when they release the Kraken and it gets overturned and none of these state houses are going to confirm the elections, because this is when all the electors met and said, Biden won our state. Biden won our state. If you remember at the time, behind the scenes, all the people were saying, no, they're not going to do it. They're not going to ratify it. These governors aren't going to do it. Governor of Arizona, governor of Georgia, all this stuff I remember very specifically. And they came out and did it. And this is when everybody who looked at the same eclipse, the same chart, that it's hitting Donald Trump's, oh, he's going to do it. You know, these people who were born on eclipses, surprises happen, big surprise. I'm like, yeah, and there's going to be no big surprise. This eclipse is happening on his debilitated moon. That ain't the sign of victory. And it's only a biased astrologer that could say that someone's debilitated moon getting eclipsed on the day when they could suffer a gigantic loss is somehow going to win. Now, that's just how unbiased it can be. There was nothing favorable about this for Donald Trump that day. Nothing. This was a complete loss that could have been seen thousands of miles away. But of course, this is how someone's personal views can get distorted. But again, I was watching the transits the whole time since the election, right? So again, these things are always lurking. It didn't just happen that day. That day was a culmination of all that stuff behind the scenes. As we were getting closer to the eclipse, that's when all those machinations were happening, all that secrets. So again, this is happening all the time. So in the course, we're also going to talk about these eclipses this year, these transformative times, and again, making predictions about the eclipse in April, about the eclipse in October. And again, both for personal growth, because there's a lot of spiritual power and development on the personal level for all of us, the personal collective level, and also as these things affect world events. We're also going to, get the accurate calculation so you can know exactly how long one eclipse affects. You'll hear it say, oh, for 6 months it affects. That's not actually true. It's a gradient. It's a gradient of 6 months, but it's actually when the sun gets closer to the next node, that's when you start to see the effect. And the other one starts to wane. It's just like a sunrise and sunset. It's highest at noon, but then it's a gradient toward that and then a fading away. So we'll talk about that. And also accurate calculations. You'll see the true node versus the mean node. There's really, we'll talk about what those things mean. Again, the difference between the Rahu and Ketu eclipses, the difference between the sun and moon eclipses, and understanding the people born near the eclipses. Like, Casey and I are both eclipse people, but you have them in your life. So what do you think, Casey? Looks pretty cool, huh? I can't wait to have you on there.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. I love looking at all this stuff. And as you've seen, I've been keeping track of a lot of that stuff in real time since I took your certification course back in 2016. So even like the year before, when there was that big eclipse at the galactic core, we were saying, watch out for that. And that was the time when COVID hit, right? During that eclipse. So a lot of stuff has happened.
As you can see, this is the stuff that Casey has put. This was his eclipse just not that long ago, November 28 to 20. The one that we just had, Rahu and Pisces, Ketu and Virgo. So again,
I did up a nice little article there for everybody who wants to see, how that affects everybody for all 12 signs and go along with that as well as your video that you did, which is really great too.
Right. So you can see all the updates that Casey also talks about these things a lot as well. So you want to look at his page there, Gold Star Astrology. But again, this is going to be a very unique opportunity to not just understand, again, both ends of the node, how they affect differently in your personal life, of course, in our collective experience, but also, again, how to also manage these things in your life, because we live in this world where we have all kinds of, temptations to get derailed. Again, it's complicated, but not that hard. You'll learn to read the personal and collective and unseen, mysterious nodal axis. So you'll be able to read this as well. So you could stop being so blindsided by the world and the confusing part. Because again, it's very easy to like lose our way. It doesn't mean that the world doesn't affect us, but it's very beneficial to understand that right now, like we've moved from an Aries obsession, an Aries Virgo obsession, Aries Libra obsession, to now it's a Pisces Virgo. So you can be in alignment now, understanding that it's that kind of thing that's going on. People are under a Pisces collective delusion relative to Rahu and a Virgo kind of scrutiny and sort of dissatisfaction with Ketu. Again, this is what we're going to talk about, how to understand this collective movement. And again, how it's sort of percolating behind the scenes. We're moving closer toward the Rahu end of the eclipse now, because we're still closer to the Ketu eclipse that just happened, because the sun is still closer, but it's getting closer. We're starting to feel that one wane and the next one start to wax. We're waxing closer toward the upcoming Rahu eclipse now, the upcoming Rahu and Pisces eclipse. But you'll be able to understand and not just be blindsided by what's confusing about the world. And then the single most important blind spot you have that makes you exaggerate and overestimate what might be possible. This is relative to Rahu. Single most important blind spot you have that makes you withdraw from life because you're critical, even despondent. This can be the Ketu end. Again, we have a sort of despondency related to Ketu. Oh, it'll never work. Oh, Rahu is like, oh, it'll all work. Like we're just kind of blown up one way or the other, both personally and collectively. And again, where these things fall relative to your chart. Casey does great work in having his sort of cosmic calendar every month, tracking where things are relative to your ascendant. This comes down to the nodal axis as well. So understanding that, and by the way, one of the classes that I have as a bonus, you get tons of bonus classes, 3 of them actually. One of them, the first one is called Rahu, Ketu in all 12 houses. And this is either by your natal chart or by transit to understand how you are being affected. You know, people get these courses often. It's really funny. And they have all these bonus classes and they don't watch them for some reason. This is 2 hours of like gold. I mean, if you understand this in your life, you will have made so much. It will clarify so much in your life. Casey,
yeah,
you can attest to that.
I took those classes and it's a core part of my readings that I do. Right? That Rahu Ketu is like, if you're hitting that lesson, man, you're pretty much gold on everything else you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so understanding like just where what the Rahu Ketu axis is in your chart when you were born, but also where it is in the sky relative to your ascendant. For me, Rahu is going through my 10th house, and I'm totally feeling it. It's going over my Jupiter. I totally feel it. Total shift from when Rahu was in Aries in the 11th. With Ketu, with Casey, he's got a Scorpio ascendant. Ketu, I'm going to start calling you Ketu. No, his axis just moved into a much more favorable one, actually. Rahu going through the 5th. He was even just telling me, oh, things are exploding. Things are really popping because Rahu is now going through his 5th house, which is a very creative place, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So again, this stuff is gold. Understanding this in your life. A few other bonuses I'll come back to in a minute. But so again, how to understand these things, those blind spots that either allow you to exaggerate or overestimate what might be possible, which is Rahu that you need to reel in, or that bring about withdrawal, even sort of despondency. And again, how to stay sane, positive, personally grounded in the midst of war, terrible worldly situations. We're going to talk about this stuff. It's real. And again, the nodal axis is a huge part of our collective karma at any given time. Crazy eclipse people, like we said, where, how to deal with people who were born near eclipses. Maybe that's even you and you want to understand yourself. But the real power that you can learn from us, eclipse people, us, is how to be a rule breaker in a good way. That's really the power of the nodes is and again, they're somewhere in your chart. And you'll find the ways where you can be a rule breaker in a good way. How to be a king or queen in your life. Again, because Rahu and Ketu are the kingmakers. Literally, it says Rahu is the kingmaker. And what you can learn from those who have prominent natal, eclipses in their natal chart, just like Trump, he was born near a eclipse. Say what you want to about him. He's lived a very unique life, very much a rule breaker on his own terms. If you like that, I didn't mind it until he tried to be president and run everybody else's life. Then it started to be an issue. I've always said about him, by the way, is I have never minded anything. The problem is he got out of his lane. When he was a celebrity doing this stuff, fine, do it. You come in and now you want to run the world. That's a little different. So anyway, but it's an important thing about knowing your dharma and your swadharma. That's the biggest lesson with him. But there's a lot we can learn from him and his like, okay, I'm my own person. But this is the power of the nodes, and we're meant to be an individual. We're meant to step into this identity. And again, like I say, 2024 election politics, I'm even going to make a prediction about the 2024 election as it stands now. I have been looking at it, and we're going to look at that. It happens after the October eclipse in Virgo. So a lot ahead. And Casey, what do you have to say about that? You ready?
Yeah, I was just thinking about like rule number one of eclipse people: leave them alone most of the time. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited about talking about all this stuff, and I've obviously I saw that 2024 election thing and started doing some research on my end too, and yeah, cool stuff to talk about. With, like I said, the popes, the royalty, the celebrity, the USA chart too, which we did an article. You wrote that article that I helped you with, and this helps kind of land another great case study for that chart that you came up with, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, you have to understand, folks. Casey's very understated here, but he's a great researcher. The reason I really wanted to get him in on this, because actually I planned to do it the weekend earlier and said, can you do it? And he's like, no, I can't. I'm saying, all right, how about a week later? Because I really wanted Casey to do this with me, because I know he does this research and he likes to do it. And this is, in some ways, it's kind of thankless work. You have to really like it, because there's nothing, because people are like, how do you do this? How do you do it? Well, you have dates and you go find them and you do it. You got to want to do it, though. You got to want to get in there and be fascinated with it. And he is, for me, it's, I got that. I also have Rahu in the first, but I have Saturn in the 8th house, which is what really makes me like research. 8th house and Capricorn, and we both have that. Casey has Scorpio ascendant, but he also has a bunch of planets in Capricorn. Capricorn loves digging into mysteries and trying to solve things and concentrate on things like that. So I knew, I was like, oh yeah, research popes. You'll love this one. So he went basically, man.
Yeah, it was profound. It's profound to see how, even if you just narrow it down to births and deaths, how the last 7 popes, if that lines up to 13 different items, right? Because one pope's still alive, and 70% of the births and deaths of the popes were during an eclipse within that range of eclipse season, and it was just really like, wow, because in reality the percentage of time that is an eclipse is so small, and so it just was what they call statistical anomaly, and it just was really, really cool to look at.
Yeah, 70% is like ridiculous when you consider how many people are born on eclipses, like during that cycle. It's not a high percentage, but again, this is why I started looking at this years ago and was like, again, the reason I know this and figured this stuff out is because I was interested, and I started looking at what makes someone a pope or a king or this, and I just started seeing eclipses everywhere, and I'm like, well, that makes sense. I was born on near eclipse. Hey, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm a pope or a
king, right?
What?
You're the long lost king, right? We just need to
or
trace
the pope.
I mean,
we're either popes or kings. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which is better or worse, actually.
Yeah. Gandalf never found me, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but it one of the things about it, and you said leave us alone. It's leave us alone when you're talking about the eclipse people in the way they want to be. Like, depends on what it is. Like, just it's understand the eccentric part, like it's just an eccentricity, right? And again, the beauty is in the details, understanding what the eccentricity is, what the imbalance is, and again, it's also a matter of how much is joined that nodal axis, right? How much is joined that eclipse, how much is getting affected. But again, things like what I said here, this house axis is one of the biggest or the most important. Yours is in the third house, right, Casey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Casey, he's got it in the third house, and it's also with Mars. It's several planets there, and it's a Ketu eclipse in the third house, and Sun is there, Mars is there, his ruling planet. So there's a whole lot implicated with that eclipse. So third house stuff, which is stuff like this, like research, figuring things out. With me, it's not third house, but it's Gemini. And I also have this, it's the Sun, and it's also my ruling planet. So there's a correlation there, even though a different way of seeing it. But so again, just in those areas, you got to leave them alone. Like, get out of their way while they're doing that thing, and understand the eccentricity. And hopefully there's also wisdom coming through it, like it's ruling planet or something that's, that brings to higher consciousness. So with Casey, it's also joined an exalted ruling planet. With me, it's my ruling planet also in the same house, in the same sign. So you want to see that there's something bringing, hopefully, intelligence to the eclipse if the person was born near eclipse. By the way, you could contrast that with Donald Trump. The dignity of the planets that are being eclipsed is really not very high, particularly this moon. And this is exactly and particularly why anyone could predict without bias that this was not going to be favorable, because it wasn't just that his Ketu, that he was born also on an exact lunar eclipse, but it's a debilitated moon. And also the sun here is not in a very, the sun in a Taurus is not, it's not a very favorable sign. It's not like it's Aries or Sagittarius or Leo. These, the dignity of these planets are not very high, and they're eclipsed. The sun is also the very last degree at Sandi. Again, the health of the luminaries here is not very strong within the eclipse. So there's more of a possibility that the excessive qualities and the negative obsessions of the eclipse are going to dominate in this case, which can be like endless appetite and emotionally thin-skinned and oversensitive with a debilitated moon. That's just a standard debilitated moon correlation. Then you throw in that it's exactly joined to Ketu eclipse. That's, again, but it still brings power. There's no question, because eclipse has power. And you look for that in other areas. But so, these are some of the things that we'll talk about in principle. Casey, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, like you said, the yogas and all that is how we would evaluate it if we're doing like a prediction and all that. But for those dignities, it really just shows how, someone can get away with things the way that, those debilitated planets don't give that feedback like an exalted planet. If you were doing that kind of thing, instant feedback of that's the wrong thing, whereas a debilitated planet can get away with doing adharmic stuff so much better than somebody. Yes,
it's hidden. And in this case, also really what you look at is also the dignity of the ruler. So just to say, it's not just that the sun isn't so favorable in Venus signs, but Venus, the ruler, is also in the 12th house, confusing, not in the light, and it's with Saturn, a very vicious malefic for Leo. So again, these are not functional malefics. Leo gets their power from Mars, Jupiter, and the sun. Really, all Trump's power comes from Mars, if you want to look at the chart in that context. Mars and a lot of eclipsed appetite, ambition, run amok.
Right.
So, but anyway, so there's a lot to be said. And again, this course, it's normally $97. It's, about half that, only $47 for that weekend. And by the way, when you do get the course, more than 12 hours. Again, if you go to the website, actually, I'll just drop it in here. I do that. If you go to the website, let me just put it here. I'll put it there in the chat. But the other website is, I put Sam's eclipse course.info. That's also Sam's eclipse course.info. You'll get that. I'll put that in the chat as well. I usually have those teed up. But anyway, so you can register. You just click the button, and when you click it, it opens the checkout page. But again, one of the things also is you get tons of bonus classes. Like I said, just go over really quick before we wrap up. 3 amazing bonus courses. These are core bonuses that you get. Again, this is some feedback on some lunar nodes. I've taught on the lunar nodes many times in my life because they're endless sources of knowledge and wisdom. This is a few feedback from class that I taught, but I already spoke about the Rahu Ketu in all 12 classes, including where you have it and where it is in the sky relative to your ascendant. Like if you have a Leo ascendant, Rahu is going through your 8th house now. Virgo is your 2nd house. Again, so for example, Trump, that's what he has. He's got the Leo ascendant. Rahu's now going through his 8th house. He's in some danger. These court cases are real. And Ketu is going through Virgo over his retrograde Jupiter. That's where his transits are right now. So this is some intense stuff. So again, that's the first bonus class, is this Rahu Ketu in all 12 houses, understanding the relationship of that nodal axis relative to each of the ascendants, whether in your natal chart and or by transit. Then this is a course I put together, a group of 2 courses called Cosmic Fingerprint, the Sun, Moon, and Lunar Nodes. Includes 2 classes. One is the Sun, Moon Matrix, Vulnerability and Victory, where I explain how each sign has a vulnerability and victory matrix set up. Wherever the sign of Cancer falls is where we inherently feel vulnerable. Wherever the sign of Leo falls is where we overcompensate with action. So again, years ago, I realized something very interesting, that the interplay between the sun and the moon and the signs they rule, when measured from each ascendant, defined a core motivation. It's it's not easily seen and really can't be duplicated or understood in any other way. It's just this thing. So again, one says, I don't know what to do about this, the sign of Cancer. One area of life, we just kind of feel helpless. We just don't really know what to do about it. For example, like with Gemini, it's the 2nd house of values and like having solid things to hold on to and possessions and values. Like, I don't really know. They could change any minute. It could be anything. So, and then the other one says, okay, then do this, which is, so think about things, find your pleasure, your desires, your happiness, find what makes you happy, because I don't know what to do about all these values. And that could even include family, other things. So the sign of Leo, the 3rd house, overcompensates. So this is something that's really not easily understood. Scorpio, it's the 9th house. I don't really know what to believe. But again, wherever that sign of Cancer is, we're very vulnerable and sensitive in that area. It's very deeply emotional for us. That's the other thing. Very emotional thing, but we don't really know what to do about it. This is why Scorpio is always, quote, sort of spiritual, but kind of longing to connect. They don't know what to believe, but I want to believe something, but I don't know what. So the sign of Leo is like, well, so what? Just do something. Just have some power. Just be responsible, right? Because Leo is the 10th house. So again, you can see this, and it's really not duplicated in any other aspect of the signs, of each of the 12 signs. Case, anything you want to add to that? What?
Perfect example of that is how you got me to help you teach the courses. Like, you want to teach this class with me, and then I'm in my 9th house of Cancer going, yeah, sure. What do you want me to do? And then you instantly gave me a responsibility, and then that 10th house kicks in, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I got it.
There you go. Yeah. So it's a very powerful thing. It sounds simple, but it's really important. And it also brings together a lot of things. It brings together each of the 12 signs, each of the houses, this deeper motivation. And so again, this is very important. Again, free class that you can get. And then another one is called Releasing the Serpent, where I talk about reconciling the nodal opposite. And you probably don't realize this. I figured this out years ago, that every nodal opposite has a common theme which is called, it's Bhavat Bhavam. I call it Bhavat Bhavam compounding. So for example, the second and eighth house. The second from the second is the third house, and the eighth from the eighth is the third house. If you have the fifth and ninth house axis, the fifth from the fifth is the ninth, and the ninth from the ninth is the, or I'm sorry, what is it?
Fifth from the fifth is the ninth, and the ninth from the ninth is the fifth. Yeah.
Right. That's the one where, and so that one is closed, but most of them have this, thing where, like, if you say the first and the seventh, right? The first from the first is the first, and the seventh from the seventh is the first. And so, the 4-10 axis, the fourth from the fourth is the seventh, and the 10th from the 10th is the seventh. So they'll have this common house. Both nodal axis extreme will have the common house. And that common house is what releases the serpent. It's what releases the serpent. And so this is a very deep concept as well. Both of these are also just bonus classes that you can get. Again, here's the videos and manual from that, from both of them. This is the releasing the serpent. This is the hidden vulnerability. And then the last one is a royal case study that I did on showing, it's actually great for family astrology and also royals. It was kind of a combination because you can also see the family synastry. And I have this together. Very interesting to see how families incarnate, particularly relative to the nodes and other things. So the other thing that I've just decided to do here, and you can see there's a timer down here, is I'm going to be teaching 4 what I'm calling them shock and awe classes that are very focused, sort of laser focused technique based classes that drill down into the hidden power of the nodes. I'm going to be doing this going forward in other areas of life as well. And between now and February 3rd, when the course starts, I'm going to be teaching 4 of them. There's going to be 4 of these. They'll be taught live. And if you pay in advance before them, like if you register right now, you'll get all 4 of them. But they're not going to be recorded and just given to anybody. They're only going to be given to people that register for this in time, right? So if someone does it now, they'll get all 4 of those classes. And the first one is January 18th, which is in a couple days if you're watching this live. And it's going to be on Rahu, Ketu, and animal magnetism, charm, and sexuality. Because again, when planets join the nodes, it really magnifies this gender aspect of the planets. So when planets join, again, Rahu Sun, Rahu Mars, Rahu Venus, or Ketu, and of course they're different. Rahu Venus is different than Ketu Venus. So I'm going to do this very powerful class. It'll be 20 to 30 minutes on animal magnetism, charm, and sexuality on January 18th. And if you register before that, if you register before the end of January 17th, then you'll get that. If you don't, and you still sign up for the class between now and then, if you sign up before January 20th, then you'll get these last 3. So each time one of these deadline passes, you won't get one of those shock and awe classes, but you'll still get all the core bonuses. You'll still get everything we're talking about here. This is a way to get people to just take action, because frankly, people sit back and they just, oh yeah, I'm going to come, but I'll do it later. Look, do it now, and you'll not only get all of these bonuses I just talked about, but you'll get these really powerful, focused, 20 to 30 minute classes. So again, the one on January 18th is animal magnetism, charm, sexuality. We all know people who were born with Rahu or Ketu join the nodes. Maybe you have them join the nodes and you want to understand this part of your nature. I'm telling you, it's actually very powerful. Like if you're a woman and you have Rahu joined one of those gendered planets, it's going to really, Rahu or Ketu, it's going to really affect, again, and even your relationship with the opposite sex or whatever. It's going to magnify that masculine or feminine quality, and it'll be different. If it's Rahu Moon, it's going to be different than Rahu Venus. Ketu Moon, Ketu Venus, they're all different. I'm going to break that down and how it's going to affect each person, like the gendered, identity. Then on January 21st, which is Sunday, I'm going to be talking about the half return and the age of maturity. People always say, what happens, like, for example, people who have Ketu in Pisces when they were born and Rahu in Virgo, now they're getting the half return. What does it mean when it comes the half return? It's a great question. And I've always kind of poo-pooed a little bit, but I've recently really figured out some very deep things to say about this, and understanding these half returns, and also how it plays into the age of maturity of the nodes, which happens 45 to 48. So again, I'm going to be talking about this January 21st. Again, if you pay now, you'll get all 4 of these. If you don't pay until after the 18th, but before the 21st, then you'll get these last 3. So anyone who is registered in time will get the recordings or get to attend live these shock and awe classes. It's not hard to understand. Again, and then January 27th, which is next Thursday, it'll be, should be not 27th. 27th or 28th. I'll get the dates right. It'll be the next Thursday. What is Thursday? 25th. Sorry, I got this wrong. This will be January 25th. It'll be Rahu, Ketu, and the deities, myths, and nakshatras. So those 6, very important understanding. And that'll be the deities for, and those nakshatras of Ashwini, Ardra, Swati, Magha, Mula, and Shatabishak, right? So how to really understand planets in them. People have a lot of planets in those nakshatras. The nodes will also be very lit up for you in this regard. And then the last one, which will happen on the Sunday before, sorry, I got these dates wrong. That'll be January 28th. Yeah, this should be 25th. This is 28th. Rahu, Ketu, and faded family connections, like in family charts. So again, it's very easy. If you register now, you'll get all of these. But as it gets closer, you won't, some of these will be taken away. But these are 4 really great ancillary classes and training. So I'm going to be releasing these to the public. I've decided to be doing some of these shorter classes because people, like shorter, technique-based things. So I'm going to be doing quite a bit of those as I release courses like this, and this is the first beginning of that. So Casey, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, those that was one of probably the biggest quantity of questions I got when I did that post on the node axis change, is like, what happens when my K2's in Pisces and it's kind of flipped around? And so that'd be a good thing, because I know a lot of people wonder about that, and that'll be a great way to kind of learn about that. And so all those, that's a cool idea to have those little mini classes that talk, about just one little thing that people can focus on and get, a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, and they're mini classes, but they're also, again, it's easy. And I mean, you're right, because it's not like the whole bunch of stuff. It's just this one focused thing. But again, people shouldn't underestimate how transformative it can be to understand, like, someone in your life. Like, again, this is very complicated stuff. And like, let's say you're in the people in your life, your loved ones, and you're like, oh yeah, my partner has Rahu moon, and we go on with our life. Like, do you understand what that means? Like, do you really get what that means? Like, this is a huge thing. It's huge. And it's going to be very huge, particularly like a partner. Again, think of our gender identity and how we relate with that nature as the moon, which is the emotions. And again, it's going to be very different if it's a man than if it's a woman. Her relation to her femininity, if it's Rahu moon, is going to be very different than if it's Ketu moon, or if it's a man in Rahu moon or Ketu moon. Again, there's a lot of variety, there's a lot of potential here. And just thinking, again, we sort of gather information, but we don't really go deep into it. So we're going to go deeply into these concepts, and they're all very deep, right? They're all very deep. And so there's a lot to unpack there. And, Casey's going to join me again before the class starts, before we actually start on February 3rd or 4th, February 3rd and 4th with, with another, hangout like this where we, talk about some stuff. But really want to thank Casey for coming today, and thank everyone for also showing up.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And so we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, it's Sam. I'm making this quick video to explain a cool thing that I'm doing for the upcoming Eclipses course. I'm creating 4 what I'm calling shock and awe classes about the lunar nodes in anticipation of the weekend course in February. You can get all 4 of those shock and awe classes. There'll be about 20 to 30 minutes about different facets of the lunar nodes. The first on January 18th is called Rahu Ketu Animal Magnetism, Charm, and Sexuality when planets join the lunar nodes in a natal chart. You may have planets joined one of the nodes or have friends who do or whatnot. It really exacerbates certain aspects of the planet, especially a certain type of magnetism. Then on January 21st, I'm doing a class on Rahu Ketu and the half return and the age of maturity. People ask me all the time, what happens when Rahu in the sky goes over natal Ketu and what have you? So I'm going to talk about that, and especially as it relates to the age of maturity of the nodes, which is the mid-late 40s. Then on January 27th, I'm doing another one on the deities, myths, and the nakshatras of the lunar nodes. That would be, of course, Ashwini, Ardra, Magha, Mula, Swati, and Shatabishak. And so you understand that hidden power. And then on January 28th, I'm doing one on Rahu Ketu, faded family connections, when you see the nodal connections between partners, lovers, but especially families and whatnot. We incarnate with certain family. So again, these 4 I'm calling shock and awe, just to give it a name, because I know that people are really digesting things in much shorter increments now. So rather than complain about it, I'm just making this part of the offering. And these classes will all be offered at different times as separate classes. But again, if you register before January 18th, you will be able to get all 4 of those. But as it gets closer to the class time, you will miss out. So for example, if you register between the 18th and the 20th, then you'll be able to get the last 3, but you won't get that first one. So these aren't going to just be recordings that you can get forever. These are offered now before the class, and you can get them, but then once they're taught live, then you won't get them anymore. You will get the recordings if you paid in time, but after that you won't get access to them unless you pay for them. So again, it's a great opportunity for everyone who wants to get the Eclipse course to also get these 4 shock and awe classes, but you also have great bonuses as part of the Eclipse course. One is Rahu Ketu and all 12 signs. Again, this is an extremely valuable class. And another is a course that I did called Releasing the Serpent, where I analyze Rahu Ketu and the polarizing axis and a way to overcome that. Then you also get a class on the Sun-Moon Matrix, which allows you to understand each of the 12 zodiac signs through the houses of Cancer and Leo. And then you also get a class on Royal Vedic Astrology and seeing how the nodes influence royalty. So again, this will be a great opportunity to really understand about eclipses, 2024, the year ahead. Again, that's the focus of the main course on eclipses, personal and cultural cycles of change and transformation. That'll be taught on February 3rd and 4th. But between now and then, there's great opportunities to really indulge and imbibe in deep teachings about the lunar nodes. But again, there are these bonus classes that will be released, as if you pay for them in advance, then you get them. If those deadlines pass, you still get the full course and all of those bonuses, but you'll miss out on these shock and awe classes. I really recommend. For a limited time, I'm offering 10 hours of masterclasses, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, Quantum Vedic Astrology, and Spiritual Astrology Masterclass. These are 3 great courses that will really help you a lot. Now, in case you don't know who I am, I taught the Astroved certification course, Dattatreya Shiva Baba, in 2010. Ravi Shankar published my book in 2018. I've been around for decades. I've been teaching these great classes, and if you go to VedicAstrologyEssentials.com, you can get this 90% off discount of these 3 great classes, more than 10 hours, guaranteed value. You can check this out. These 3 classes will give you all the necessary tools to begin to learn Vedic astrology. Please find me on YouTube at Sam Jeppy, Vedic Astrology Teacher. On there since 2007, thousands of hours of classes,
Also on Facebook at Astrology Teacher, tons of articles updated regularly, and I'm on Instagram at Vedic Astrology 108, ongoing updates and interaction.